The Apple-designed Pippin.
Was it a very early taste of the Apple TV?
Keep watching and find out. Welcome to the Macdownunder Podcast for all Australian Apple computer enthusiasts and collectors. Welcome to episode 23 of the Macdownunder Podcast. I'm Justin, and thanks to everybody for your likes and comments and views. The last episode went gangbusters. This week we're talking about the games machine that Apple designed, but handed to the Japanese company Bandai to sell, the Apple Pippin. And we'll also cover collecting news, some coming events, and recent finds. Now to introduce my co-host Matthew. How are you, and how did the Mac Museum Open Day go?
G'day, Justin. G'day, everybody. Yeah, great to be back. It was a great weekend down at Mac Museum. I will admit, for anyone that came along, saw that my health wasn't at 100%, but the day itself was still incredibly enjoyable and great to see a lot of familiar faces that had come down. I would say it's probably one of the more popular days that the museum's been open, where there's been people coming back down for a second, third, fourth time, and really great to see just enthusiasts together chatting, learning new things. I learnt some new things as well. JD, one of the highlights for me was talking with Danny, who comes down and does some repair work here, and he's given me the confidence to attempt the twist off method on my next recap attempt on some boards. So it was great to see what Danny does there with his recap work. So apart from that, there hasn't been too much else to report. The museum days are obviously, a big part of the week for me when they come about. And that's probably been about it for me. JD, what about for you?
The open day was fantastic, and in fact, my last week was pretty much focused around that. I got an Apple Pippin across from Japan. It arrived on the Friday, and I brought it along on the Saturday just in case people were interested. And so we had a bit of a demo of that in the back corner. And yes, it was great to talk to all the other regulars and some of the new faces that were there, and find out what their interests were. It was a great day. So the rest of the week pretty much preparing for this episode, doing some research about the Apple Pippin now that I've got a few of them to talk about, and also preparing for the next computer display that's next weekend, which again I will probably bring my Pippins along to, given they're sitting right under my feet at the moment. So pretty much onto the episode, because it's all about the Pippin.
That's it. I'm really excited about this one, JD, because seeing the Pippin that you brought down on Saturday was a new experience for me, actually playing with one and seeing it in use. And I feel like I've missed out on something in my childhood there, not knowing too much about it at the time it was current. So I'm excited to hear about it today in this episode.
And I'm pleased to say, since we had to play with some Japanese titles that we had a bit of a challenge interpreting, I've managed to get some English titles and some games, and we can maybe chat about that as we get up to the software bit today.
Very cool.
All right, so we're heading back to the 1990s, and Apple had done a whole lot of things. They'd licensed the Macintosh operating system off to other people, which is a bit of an enabler for the Pippin to come. They developed the Newton, which we've talked about before. They co-designed the Apple QuickTake, the first digital camera that they put out. They were having a play with set-top boxes over in Europe. They had the Mac-like Things group that we talked about last week that made the Apple design speakers. They also made the Power CD that I think we talked about very briefly last week. Which was, of course, a personal CD player, a bit like a Discman. They also had the Macintosh TV that it came out in that period. And you've probably noticed all of these things were in dark colours and in the 90s, which was a bit different to the rest of the Apple products, probably demonstrating that all of these things were different to the Macintosh. and they were clearly looking in other markets and for other devices. So what about multimedia and games? Well, apparently, inspired by the Power CD, they had started looking at a handheld LCD screen multimedia device, not just a music device, called Sweet Pea. But it got shelved, but probably was the inspiration for the iPod a couple of years later. But in the meantime, the Bandai company from Japan wanted to partner with Apple to make a gaming device based on a cut-down sized Macintosh. And from that, we got the Pippin.
There it is.
There it is. So this is the development version that I've got a photo of. So it was December 13, 1994. And from what I can tell from the research, it's kind of interesting. It looks like they did an announcement at the Las Vegas Winter Computer Electronics Show that we now know as CES. But on the same day in Tokyo, they also announced their partnership with Bandai. So depending where you read, you'll see one of those stories or the other. I suspect they actually did both announcements on the same day. So the Pippin. So how was it named? Well, the folklore, which is pretty much everywhere on the internet now when you're searching on the Pippin, it was named for the Newtown Pippin, which is a small variety of apple related to the Macintosh apple. So what a play on words.
Nice connection there. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. There is also a suggestion that it's a slightly bitter tasting apple, and unfortunately probably foreshadowed a little bit the future of the Pippin. Now it's an interesting name because they actually use Pippin as the code name for the Apple Profile hard drive as well. So it isn't the first time they'd used it. So they've been playing with the idea of a smaller Apple for some time. But it ended up, and still, I guess, best known in Apple circles as the name for this gaming console.
Let's note the logo, which features 6 colors. It's almost a variation of Apple's color choice for the classic logo. There we go.
Six color logo. So it is the same 6 colors.
Yep.
And of course the stylized text. So using the lowercase I and the exclamation mark for the eyes, which you'll notice in our thumbnail for the video as well. So some of the other interesting things is other names for it. On the bottom of my development unit, it actually shows you the working name that they had, which was the Power Player. And in fact, in some of the research, you'll see people referring to it as the Bandai Power Player. So it was known as a few different things. And in the USA, it came out and was actually called the At-World. So there's a couple of different variations. So there's the Pippin, there's the Power Player, there's the At-World, and in fact in Japan it was known as the At-Mark, which we now know is the symbol at for email, but back in the 90s they were concerned that people didn't know what the symbol meant, and so they called the Japanese version literally the At-Mark, spelt out A-T-M-A-R-K.
So fundamentally all the same device, just different names, different branding.
Pretty much. In Europe, Cats Media, which was previously I think a software distributor, they also had a version of the Pippin, which they called the KMP 2000. I haven't got a photo of that because I don't own one. They're pretty rare. But again, it was actually made by Bandai and then shipped out to Cats Media in Europe. So it went by a whole lot of different names, but essentially they were all the same machine. There's some minor variations we'll talk to when we get to the specifications, but pretty much same machine, same software titles, and the same peripherals, as we'll talk about in a moment. The final production units were manufactured by Mitsubishi, in fact, on behalf of Bandai. So there's a few companies involved in this. Not too surprising because we know the iPhone's outsourced to other companies to make components for it. But it only had a relatively brief lifespan. So from March 96 to March 98. So it was only on sale for 2 years. Retailed for $599 US, which people thought was still a bit pricey for a gaming machine. Mind you, as we'll find out, it was probably a bit more than that in reality. So in the 2-year lifespan, only 42,000 Pippins were sold, which to me sounds like a big number, but they had projected 200,000 to 300,000 in their first year of release, and they clearly never made that, which is disappointing. Now, wait for it. There was also an announcement in 1997 that I found in the web archives online that a company called Techstream Australia had licensed from Cats Media to release the KMP 2000 in Australia as internet kiosks. I'll put the link in the description for people that want to go and have a look at that. But sadly for us here in Australia, that never happened. On to the technical details. So here's the front of the unit. The machine was a PowerPC 603, so second generation PowerPC microprocessor, only running at 66 megahertz. So it was a pretty slow machine. Originally reported to be based on the PowerMac 6100, and that's certainly what I'd always remembered. But in fact, doing some research, some people think it's more the PowerMac 6200, which had a 603E processor in it. And some people that have actually done some internal working on it actually think it's more like the PowerMac or the Performer 5200, which in fact did have a 603 version in
Aligns.
it.
So that's 603.
So, yeah, very much a product of the era. Having been in that design phase for over a year, probably suffered a bit from the low-speed processor. Mind you, it was meant to be cheap, and I guess that's one way of keeping the price down. They came with 6 megabytes of memory on board, and 1 meg was shared with video, which is not an unusual thing for Apple to do. I think they still do a bit of that today. The Cats Media version, which was a little bit later in production, actually came with 8 megabytes on board, so only minor variation there. They come with a 4-speed CD-ROM, and I've got to say, having burnt some ISOs off the internet just recently for my Pippins, they run perfectly on the production units, but they won't run on my development unit. It only likes commercial CDs that were produced for the Pippin. So I have a feeling my development unit is a single speed CD, or there's something else different about it. Very fussy about the media that it's using. You could expand the memory, and so there were apparently 2, 4 and 8 meg memory expansion cards. I'm lucky enough to have a 4 megabyte variation in the development machine, and my 2 production units have both got these 8 meg cards. They're not a SIM, unfortunately. They've got a pretty proprietary interface on the back of them, so you had to buy them from Bandai. This is the back of my development unit, and the telltale sign is the SCSI cable hanging out the back of it. Now, in fact, if your game, you can open up your Pippin because the SCSI port is still on the motherboard in the production units. And so you can, in fact, add a SCSI port to it if you wish with the cable. Apparently, it's just enough room, as mine has, to squeeze it out the back of the case. It came with video, obviously, out. Both 8-bit and 16-bit video was supported. It could run NTSC and PAL color, S-video, and VGA. And you can probably see there, just above the little latch, in the middle of the screen, there's actually a hard switch to go from VGA to PAL to NTSC. And so that gave us 16.7 million colors. And I'm not really up into video specs, but apparently it's got dual frame buffers that allowed you to do the animation, so the frame-to-frame sequencing, which makes sense to me. So the video isn't bad. Having looked at some online reviews of the games of the day, they're saying that other than the fact that it was using the 603 to do all the graphics, it actually wasn't bad for a machine of this age.
The compatibility with the video there, I think, is great. NTSC and PAL, and we're looking at 3 different output options there, which is excellent.
It is for its period. The only downside for me is that I'm having to find a VGA to Mac DV15 connector in the wrong gender orientation to use it with any of my screens. So in terms of audio, it's got stereo audio at 16-bit, 44 kilohertz, so both in and out. although I've not actually seen any software that supports audio in. In terms of data, it's got one standard serial port at the back for printer, or in fact it can do Apple Talk. And one of the games we'll talk about later, where you can network the Pippins together and play network games, which for an early 90s machine was really quite amazing. And it also came with a second serial port, which was GeoPort enabled, so it had that extra pin that we talked about many moons ago on our cables episode, which was specifically for a GeoPort modem. And so these were absolutely intended to be online. And didn't we find that out on the weekend when we were playing with the Pippin at the Mac Museum? It kept on asking us to dial up and put in phone numbers and so forth.
That's, yes, all in Japanese.
All in Japanese, just to make it fun. So back to the front. So here we've got two ruggedized ADB ports. You can see the sort of square ports there on the front, which is the special P version of the Apple desktop bus for the Applejack controllers. And as I mentioned, it's got SCSI internally. So moving on to control. So as you can see in this picture, there's rubber buttons, and we had to play with these on the weekend, trying to get the thing to eject and so forth in between trying to read the Japanese titles. So there's the power on, the eject button are probably the two you use most often, certainly the ones I've been using. But you can also use it just as a CD music player. So it's got play and pause, stop. It's got volume controls if you want to connect the headset to that jack at the front there, and forward and reverse again for track control. So it's a full-blown CD player if you wish it to be. But also, you could then plug in your Applejack controllers. Now this one's actually an infrared version. I've got the ADB version right here in my hand. So the Applejack controllers were another option. And you could have up to 4 ADB devices connected, but you needed some Y splitters. And unfortunately, I haven't got any of those. And then there was also an optional combined keyboard and trackpad. I've got to say, we'll talk about it in collecting in a moment. They are hideously expensive. So if you're into collecting these, there's lots of options for what you can add to it, but they're probably more expensive than the Pippins, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Interestingly, in terms of printers, the early StyleWriter printers all worked on the back of the machine, so the StyleWriter 2 right through to the 2500, and they also had compatibility for the Epson Color I/O printers, obviously were around for the Mac as well. So some other aftermarket expansions, you could get a barcode reader, the SuperCat barcode reader. Apparently a company called JData used to publish a monthly magazine with a whole lot of websites listed, and they put the barcodes in there, and you could use the Pippin to scan in the barcode and have a look at those websites on your TV. So they had the right idea about the multimedia online capacity of the Pippin, and actually sold the whole system complete if you wanted to do that. The other thing is on the bottom of the Pippin, there's an XPCI plug, which you can see towards the bottom there. It's a slightly brown color, which allows you to plug in other peripherals and stack them with your Pippin. And so in my development unit, you can see there it came with the floppy drive, and we'll talk about that again when it comes to collecting. But there are other things as well. So Olympus developed a magneto-optical drive that also came with a SCSI adapter inside it. So that was a commercial sale. I've never seen one available. There are also Apple desktop bus conversion blocks so that you could actually use your Mac keyboards and your mice with the Pippin as well. There was an Ethernet port designed but never released, and Cats Media outsourced to a third party to develop an Ethernet adapter and floppy module and a whole range of other things, all as one add-on unit, but again never actually saw production. There was a zip drive developed. There are photos online of the development unit, but again never released. And there's been a few attempts. In fact, there's been a very recent attempt by a designer to make a true PCI adapter so that you can plug in an Ethernet card or any other PCI card that you wanted to use.
Hmm.
Similarly, people were talking about having a SCSI expansion add-on unit rather than having to crack the unit open and put the cable in. And there are other rumours about external hard drives, graphic accelerators, and even graphic cards that had additional codecs for video in them as well. So there was an awful lot planned for expansion, and it's in most of the advertising of the day. But only really the floppy drive and the Olympus drive made it out into production. And even those are really quite rare to come across. So, moving on to software. So this is the suite of discs that I got when I purchased my Atworld, the US device. But there was a whole separate suite of software available for the Atmark in Japan. And there were 109 titles for the Pippin that were produced at the time. But only 18 of them were in English. The vast majority were in Japanese, as we know, because they're the ones we were playing with on the weekend. So what's on the CD? So the Pippin used a runtime environment derived off the Mac OS 7.5.2, and people have hacked versions up to OS 8 to work on the Pippin. We'll talk about some of those in a minute. They did have a reduced memory footprint, remembering that they only had 6 megabytes to play with on board. And so it was a bit like the cut down version of OS 10 that we get for the iPhone, iOS, and Apple TV, TV OS. It's the same operating system that the Mac used, but a whole lot of it was stripped out to make it fit into the Pippin's footprint. As we found on the weekend when we were using this at the Mac Museum, the system boots off the CD. So there's no Mac ROM in the unit, and that means the initial boot is really quite slow. And I think at times we thought it had failed on the weekend, but it was just taking its time booting. So the CDs also needed to be Pippinized. And so apparently back in the day, the developers would have a dongle that they'd plug into their computer to allow them to develop a non-Pippinized product. Because if you tried to boot your own disk, it just wouldn't work. And they would then have to send their code off to Apple to burn it to a CD with the special Pippinized serial number on it to allow the Pippin to load it. So without the dongle, you couldn't load third-party software. It all had to be official Bandai Apple approved software. Again, sounds very much like the App Store, doesn't it? Now, fortunately, the later ROMs on the CATS Media machines, so version 1.3, removed the authentication requirement. But I've checked on mine, and they're both 1.2s, so they absolutely need the Pippinized CDs. As I mentioned, there's 109 titles. Most are in Japanese. I guess the notable ones is there's TV Works. TV Works is the English version. There is a Japanese version that we were playing with on the weekend. There's the Web Viewer, which again is a Japanese product. In the Atworld, it's called the Atworld Browser, but it's the same software, just with the region-appropriate languages fitted. Super Marathon, I think I sent a quick photo to you, Matt, about me playing that earlier in the week.
JD, yes.
It is a great game on the Pippin compared to everything else on the Pippin, so I quite enjoyed playing that.
That's the one title I think that I'd buy a Pippin just for that. I own a Blu-ray player to play one Blu-ray movie that I own. And I would do the same with a Pippin, I reckon. Now that after you sent me that image, JD, I thought, this is awesome. Yeah, I'm obviously a fan of Marathon here, as you can see. So that was very tempting when you sent that through.
I knew that. I probably need to set your expectations for that. Have play on mine first, maybe. But yes, it does work, and most of the online reviewers say it's quite reasonable. They said don't run out and buy a Pippin just to play Marathon. There's other ways you can do that, and you certainly know that.
Yes.
But if you're into collecting and you want to have that version of Marathon, then you can. So there's actually two. Super Marathon, which is the title that I've got, actually has Marathon 1 and Marathon 2 for the Pippin on it. So couple of versions. Then there's Racing Days, which I played a lot yesterday in preparation for today and also for Sunday's computer show. And it's networked, so you can string together a few different Pippins and race against each other, I believe. Now, I've not done the networking bit yet. I had enough trouble just working out how to get racing days to work. And again, it's quite a reasonable game. You've got to remember it's an early 1990s game, and it was a demo, and it was version 1, and sadly it was never replaced. There is a Mac version that they released later on, though, based on the Pippin version, as it happens. And there's a fellow online, Keith Kaisershot, who's managed to get Quake to work on the Pippin. Now, I'm not a Quake user or player, but that sounds like it was a great project. Having a read of how he did it, it's not an easy solution. So a lot of, like a lot of us Mac hackers, you have to basically roll your own version of the Mac OS with the right version of the various QuickTime codecs, the right version of the Mac OS, Pippinize it as best you can to get Quake to work. But apparently it does. It does work. Oh. There's been some relatively recent software released. So I guess the first in the list was the Peas one, and then Peas Turbo, which stands for Pippin Ease. Took me a while to find out what that was about. And it was released in the late 90s, and it allows you to boot into the Mac operating system on your Pippin. And it's also got some arcade games on it as well. So I'll probably have that running a fair bit, I would imagine, at the show on Sunday. Then more recently, Macintosh on Pippin was released. That's got a range of titles on it, including a whole lot of system interrogation software, so that you can find out the version of the ROM and how much RAM and so forth. So there's a lot of useful utilities on that. Very recently, so in the last couple of years, there's a Kickstarter CD that's been put out. I'll put a link in the description. This really smart guy, not only does he get Quake to work, but he's also managed to get a loader that will bypass the Pippin authentication and allow you to put in your third-party disk to make it run. So they're the software titles. As I said, there's only 18 English titles for us here in Australia to make it a little bit easier. But lots of Japanese titles. And down at the museum, we had one of our regular guests, one of our younger guests, who was using his iPhone and the interpreter application to translate from Japanese. Well, if you're happy to do that, that is one way to access the Japanese titles and work out how to play them. So, future plans. Well, Apple did have plans for a Pippin 2. It was going to include FireWire, Ethernet, external SCSI, and a DVD as well. Wow. So, would have been an amazing little machine. They were going to market it as the Macintosh network computer. Now, what we know is that the Apple never released a network computer per se, but it was the basis of the iMac once Steve came back and got hold of the reins at Apple. Bandai had their own plans. They had plans for an Atmark PD. I haven't been able to work out what PD stands for, but it was going to be the same footprint as the first Pippin, but also with SCSI and a CD. And they also had plans for an Atmark X, which I think stands for expandable, because it was going to have expandable RAM, it was going to have PCI available internally, a built-in modem, and an infrared port. And they even had prototypes of both of these, but they never got launched. But of course, as we know, Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, and along with a whole lot of other projects, the Pippin got shelved. Bandai did say that they were going to support the Pippin, but ultimately they merged with Sega, the other gaming manufacturer, and the remaining stock was sold as Atmark machines through third parties. Bandai did keep their promise. They did support the machine right up to 2002, but they didn't actively develop it beyond that. And of course, Apple don't throw anything away completely, because of course now we have the Apple TV that came out in 2007. But multiple versions. And of course, it can browse the internet, play multimedia, and more recently, play lots of games as well. So
that's it.
I think the Pippin, which really was a multimedia player, I think they undersold it as a gaming machine. It was an online multimedia machine, probably 10 years too early in reality. Came out in the early 90s, And of course, the Apple TV came out in 2007, and only really recently hit its strides when Apple released Apple TV Plus, online services and games and so forth. So I think, the Pippin, we can thank it for what we've got now with Apple TV, but unfortunately not well remembered as a gaming machine for its day.
No, I would love to have been in some of those early conversations about the Apple TV and just to know whether the Pippin was mentioned or referenced at all. I would like to think that it was. That's the story, the narrative I'll play, unless someone can correct me that was there. I've got this sort of fondness that Apple do sit down at times and go, "Hey, let's check out this old device and what did we learn from it, and let's build upon it in some way." Yeah, because the Apple TV now is a very staple product. I don't think they still consider it was a hobby project, I think, originally.
I did a quick bit of research just before the show.
Yes.
So Steve Jobs absolutely introduced it in 2007 as a hobby.
Yep.
But in an article in 2014, the then CEO turned around and said that it's no longer a hobby.
Yes, right. Okay, there we go. So interesting. Yeah, interesting to see and learn. Yeah, there's potentially some origins there.
Yeah, and I think so. There's a couple of things really. There's the Apple TV, but also the iMac was the outcome of the Macintosh network computer, which was really Pippin 2. And if you go right back to the very beginning with Sweet Pea, really that was the origins of the iPod. So a whole lot of products, I think, that never quite went away. They just needed to find their niche and the right period of time to be released.
That's right.
So if you're into collecting Pippins, oh my goodness. As we mentioned in our Apples in Exile episode, the Pippin was never officially released. There was announcements, as I mentioned, but never made it here. So you are going to have, unless you're going to buy one off a collector here, which won't be cheap, I suspect, you'll need to import it from the US or more likely from Japan. So the Bandai Atmarks sell for around 1,200 Australian dollars online. I have seen one in the last couple of months as low as I think $415 from memory. So you can get them on auction a bit cheaper, but buy it now you can get them for $1,200. So they're not super cheap. The Bandai Atworlds, so the dark coloured ones, are less frequent, but generally sell for the same price. The black unmarked Atmarks, which came out after Apple dropped support, and so third parties were selling them, they're extremely rare, and I haven't seen one of those for sale for some time. So I'll keep an eye out for one of those. There is a CATS KPM 2000 available right now online for just under 10,000 Australian dollars.
You need some deep pockets here, JD.
You do, and so I'm watching it, but I'm not going to be bidding on that, and that's before you pay shipping as well. There was a development unit like mine recently sold at the R&R auctions for 3,500 Australian dollars. Again, shipping on top of that, so that's not too bad, but still pretty expensive. The accessories, oh my goodness! So the wireless controllers, so like this one I showed earlier, they sell for a couple of $100 Australian, but they're generally the ones with a Macintosh connection. So the ADB that plugs into the Macintosh, not the PADP variety that goes into your Pippin. So you then need to make your own or find a third-party adapter. I can tell you there's not many third-party adapters around. So they're expensive and difficult to find the correct ones. Wireless controllers, I showed one earlier. They're selling for over 1,000 Australian dollars. I've seen one as much as $3,400 online. I think like our price setting episode, I think that might be this person really doesn't want to sell it, but gee, what a price. The keyboards, they're a little bit cheaper. I'm still looking for a second keyboard, but they're still around 800 Australian dollars, so they're not cheap. And the Pippin floppy disk dock. Now, I showed one earlier for my development unit. One sold recently at auction in box for 1,870 Australian dollars, which
Wow.
is just amazing. So, but within a couple of days, a production unit with a floppy dock attached sold for just under $800. So I can't work this out. I think I mentioned that in a
No.
previous episode. I
Yep.
can't figure out that pricing, but the floppy docks are quite rare. Mind you, there's not an awful lot you can do with them. So it really is a
Yep.
collecting item. The game titles, if you're going to buy the legitimate game titles in package, they start at around $250 a game and can go up to the thousands, depending on a Super Marathon is in the thousands because it's so rare.
Wow.
But pretty much all of these titles are available online, given they're no longer available for sale. So it is a bit tricky, I've got to say, trying to burn those CDs on a contemporary Macintosh, which I've been doing. But the titles are there. By all means, go out and buy them. That's obviously the very legitimate way of doing it. But they are extremely expensive because they're becoming collector's items. So, do you have a Pippin? Or are you interested in getting one? We'd love to know because we're both interested. Obviously, I've been interested for a while, and Matt said he's keen too. So we'd love to know if there's other Pippin lovers out there in Australia. Let us know down in the comments. And if you've got any suggestions for future episodes, let us know down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, on to recent news. So first up, this has appeared a few times in my feed in this week. The Newton Message Pad 2000 series and the eMate 300. We know that they need a dongle to connect to your Macintosh. Well, this really crafty Newton user has made a new dongle that connects to USB-C and also has a micro SD card in it. So you don't even need to connect it to your computer. You can load up your software on the micro SD and then use the dongle to load it onto your Newton Message Pad. Fantastic GitHub project. So links down in the description. Take a look if you're interested.
So we've got in other news, James Key, I hope I've pronounced his surname correctly there, has given us some preview shots of his progress developing a 3D printed TAM. We've got a couple of accessories here that he's shown off in this Facebook post that was done to a one of the enthusiast groups online on Facebook. Good to see that there is some work being done here, I think, to allow printable replacement parts for some of the TAM accessories. JD, I'm sure this will be of interest to you in particular. For anything that might break, crack, fail, be destroyed in shipping, there's an alternative here to sourcing absolute new parts. So good progress, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this one continues to come along. I'm hoping there'll be some more progress shots, JD.
Yeah, reading the backstory, that's exactly what happened to him. Something broke in shipping, so he decided to print a new one, and then decided why not just print the whole TAM as well. So that's his plan. Gee, wouldn't it be great if we had STL files for all of the 1990s Macintosh plastics?
That's it.
YouTuber Retronaut has added to his online content with this fantastic video, the ultimate timeline deep dive, just a bit of a tongue twister, of the Apple II storage devices. Now, unfortunately, in his video, he never actually gives you the whole timeline in one shot, which I was trying to look for to demonstrate. But it's a fantastic video showing you all of the external storage options for your Apple II. And probably a nice prelude for our future episode on external storage devices for Apple. Anyway,
That's it.
there it is. So go and take a look at this as a primer, and then in a couple of episodes' time, we'll probably do a deep dive ourselves.
Cool.
And finally, for the news that the developer of Switch It, which was a 1990s multi-application switcher for the Apple IIgs. So basically multi-finder for the Apple IIgs that allowed you to copy and paste between applications. Well, the big news is he's released the source code. So if you want to tinker with it, update it, add in extra features, it's now available on GitHub. So thank you to the author who in the chat has also suggested that he never actually put restrictions on the original application either. So it's there for your use.
Very good.
Okay, on to coming events. Now, Mac Museum, we just had the open day in November, and I know that's the last one for this year. Matt, what are the plans for next year?
It is, JD. Yeah, Mac Museum will reopen in January. I'm hoping that there'll be a few dates in January and including some during the week ones or maybe some evening ones as well, just to mix it up a bit. I'm looking forward to spending some time off from the day-to-day job and spending some time here in the museum, getting a few things happening. So stay tuned on the socials for Mac Museum and the website for the opening dates to be published as soon as I can put them together.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. On Friday, the 12th of December, the Adelaide Retro Computing Group will have probably their final meeting of the year in the Unley Community Centre. They've also announced, of course, that on the 29th of November, so earlier than the next meeting, they've got their retro swap meet in the same centre. So check out in the description for links to those two events.
In Bendigo, we've got the Retro Gaming Bendigo event, which is incredibly appropriate for today's episode, talking about the Pippins. So that's on the 6th of December. They've got a first Saturday of each month routine that they're sticking to. So that's in Bendigo. And maybe bring along a Pippin. JD, do you reckon you could get to that one or maybe one in the future?
I think if my Pippins survive this weekend's show, then I will try to back it up with the Retro Gaming Bendigo. We'll see how we go.
Take it on the road, get to Bendigo. So that's, 6th of December.
So coming up this Sunday, the 23rd of November at the Darebin Community Sports Stadium in Reservoir, the Technology Markets and Vintage Computer Collection Show is on again. So remember, it's a slightly different venue to last time. From 10 a.m, my plan is to be there with some Pippins at least, and possibly a couple of other things, depending what I manage to blow up between now and Sunday. So come along this Sunday to the Darebin Community Sports Stadium.
And coming up this Saturday, November 22nd, WasFest for all of you in New South Wales. It's an Apple II focused event, and it is hosted in somebody's home. So please jump online, use the link in the description below to let them know you'll be attending if you do want to get along. So again, that's this Saturday, the 22nd. We've spoken about this one for quite a while, JD. So it's one that's obviously going to drop off the list until, well, next year, I guess. But last call for WasFest.
Right, time for this week's for sale section. And so this week, can't find too many Pippins in Australia for sale. So I've looked at some retro bargains, but there are some links to the Pippin in some of the ring-ins. So first up in Queensland, there's an iMac G5 from 2005, working with keyboard and mouse. It does need a clean. So let's look at some of the photos. So you can see that the keyboard's a bit dirty. I'm assuming all those spots on the screen is not artifact, because I've never seen artifact like that. I think it's just dirt on the screen that you need to clean off. But worth having a chat to the seller before you pay your $10 for this extremely cheap iMac G5.
Here we have a 17-inch studio display. So this is one of the ones which has the ADC connection on it. So will suit your Power Mac G4 gigabit Ethernet, up to about, up to G5 as well. I shouldn't omit the G5. G5 will have an ADC port on it still, the early ones. So $50 seems like a very reasonable price from Albury, New South Wales. It says it's been untested. In my experience, most of these have been pretty good. I think a very reasonable price for something which looks still pretty damn cool, I reckon, JD. So
they do.
17-inch, yeah.
And I noticed the seller also says they can deliver to Melbourne if you're in Melbourne.
There we go. Very good.
Okay, next one up. I think we might have had this ad once before, but it's only recently been relisted. So in country New South Wales, for $90, you can pick up a 23-inch cinema display with the aluminium surrounds. And as you can see in the photo, they do come with their power supply. So if you've got 3 Pippins that need 3 screens, you might need a couple of adapters, but here's an option to buy a set of 3 screens.
And here we have vintage Apple keyboard and mice. So for $20, it looks like you get all 4. So at $5 a piece, that's pretty good. So I reckon you've got your $20 worth in that Pro keyboard there. You can probably expect the scroll balls on those mice are going to need a bit of a clean, though they don't look too bad in this photo, I have to say. But for $20, if you're in, I think it's Hallett Cove, in South Australia. I hope I've got the location there correct. $20. That's a bargain in my book.
Yep, I totally agree. If I was in South Australia, I'd probably whip out and buy it. Righto, next up. Now, I've got to apologise. We did have this in last week's show as well. However, given the pretty clear links between the Power CD and the Pippin, I thought it was worth raising again. And the seller is a friend of the show, so there's a whole lot of reasons to promote this twice. But the Apple Power CD and matching Apple Design Speakers 2 from Perth for $350. Now, the seller does say that the Power CD powers up but does not spin discs, so just be aware of that. But these don't come up for sale terribly often. So $350, buy it now in Perth.
And finally, again related to our topic of the Pippin, is this first generation Apple TV with remote. So this is a great opportunity for only $50 to grab the first generation Apple TV and see where the Apple TV journey more recently started. If you can't cough up the dollars to go and find a Pippin online, which, as we discovered, JD, is not the cheapest, not the cheapest at the moment to do. This is a great way to satisfy your Apple device attached to the TV curiosity, and great chance to see where it started with the Apple TV experience here as well. So this one is located in Melbourne, and for $50, I think that's a pretty good pickup.
Absolutely. And apologies because it is a Core Solo Intel, so not quite meeting our criteria. But again, because of the link to the Pippin, what a great opportunity to buy one of these.
That's it.
Well, that's the end of our Pippin episode. So did we make the case that the Pippin was an early taste of the Apple TV? Certainly that's my thesis. So we'll see if people agree. Let us know down in the comments. Matt, any final thoughts about the Pippin?
I got to start saving to get a copy of Super Marathon and Pippin, and I think I can see it maybe at some point down in the future. I'll have one here at the museum connected to the Macintosh TV to get running. I think that would be really cool. But I have learned a lot here, JD. I think I can see the reason that I didn't sort of get a lot of knowledge at the time when I was a youngster was because we didn't see it here. We nearly did as we learned. So close, yeah, that's it. But so that was educational as always, JD. Thank you for taking us through it, and so good to see as well that you've got a couple in your collection as well, particularly the developer one there as well. So that's great.
Yeah, I've had them for a while, thank you. And I forgot to mention, I'll put the links down in the description. I actually made a video, I think 17 years ago, of my original Pippin playing some of these titles. So I'll put the links down in the description. They're still around. Cool.
Very good.
So we'll be back again next week. So like and subscribe so you don't miss out. And again, we'd appreciate any comments about the Pippin and about future episodes, or any other thoughts you've got around Apple collecting. We'd love to hear from you. So until we see you next time, take care.
Take care. Cheers.
Thank you for joining the Macdownunder Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.